Meetings are open to all, all who believe in basic civil rights and human dignity. For minority groups, come out, the world is what you make it, come out, right? This vision statement has the language of the social movements of the 60s radicalism. Words like oppression, liberation, basic human rights, human dignity were, by the 1970s, familiar with most Americans. Fueled by civil rights liberation and protest movements that had come before, this new form of protest for gay power and activists had learned, the activists had learned from those who came before them. Let's not be fooled by the idea of potential for liberation or the obvious studying of the nature of. That's what you do on college campuses. So they had to get a staff member from the college, had to be there to support the organization, right, the student organization. So they wanted to make it sound like it wasn't too radical at the time. Bob Osborne, original founder of the movement in Rochester, had a flair for revolutionary rhetoric. In the early empty closets, it seemed throughout the empty closets. I'm gonna jump a little bit, guys. I don't want to. Would be great reading in a book, right? So, but it's highly psychological. Okay, so the minutia of it all, right? That's what I found originally as I was writing and working with this material. Well, so what? All right, so you had a consciousness rising group. What did you do with it? What we'll ever be able to demonstrate as we move along with this research that's still underway is the change that this group fosters in the community as a whole. Not only on the campuses, not only at Brockport, at SUNY Geneseo, where the Speakers Bureau goes, and within months, they start their own gay liberation movements on campus. So we know that the Speakers Bureau was very successful. We can also see when we look at the DNC and we look at the local history that overall the gay liberation movement was very successful. And of course we know we have the Out Alliance today. So I'm gonna jump over to where that's Osborne. This is Bob Osborne. This is when they were they went to Albany for protesting. About 2,500 people showed up. Patty Evans seems to think that it was kind of a waste of time for the protest, but she thought it was good for the local members. It was good for your head. That's a quote from her. This group will actually become even more radicalized. They're going to join the People's Coalition for Peace. I've just started digging into the research on this particular group and how it would be, how closely it was related to the women's group. You were actually, you were the liaison for the group, weren't you? Does this sound familiar to you?
Vaguely. Okay,
I got some. I wrote some. I'll tell you about your history about it. Yes, I will. I'll tell you about it. But I'm going to skip this so I can go to the Speakers Bureau, and then I'll tell you about what you did at this organization as I dig in some more about it. You were there. The GLF committed to the education. The public speaking out is reflected in how quickly they formed the Speakers Bureau. Karen Hegber, who we have sitting right here today with us, stated that the Bureau started the Bureau and managed it from the opening days of the group and remained in a position for 2 years. She stepped down in February 1973 and was replaced by Liz Bell. Hagberg, a student at the Eastman School of Music, came out publicly when she and 2 other students, R.J. Alcala and Jen Fishman, did a TV spot on WXXI TV, Channel 21, in July 14th of '71. It was a show called Call 21. There were 129 calls made, and one of the questions they would ask her why she would do this. How did you have the courage to step out like this? Karen's reply that I got quoted here, I'm just going to find this out too. How she was able to muster the courage to come out like that back then. Someone had to be out in a big way. And I don't remember where I got your quote from. I'm sure it's in something I've read. I've read a lot of stuff lately. But this, of course, is rather simplistic. One needs to realize that the Dean of Students at the Eastman, Flora Burton, where Hegberg was enrolled, had worked in the library, was alleged to have been extracting signed confessions under pressure from students, threatening to send the confessions to their parents or expel them if they didn't change their ways. Nice lady. Nice lady. It's, prior to the interview at Channel 21, the Speakers Bureau is going to be many of the members of the groups. They go to psychology class. They end up at other universities. The Speakers Bureau is going to be really busy. I'm not going to, dig this out, beat this to death for you guys. I would like to get to this last couple minutes. I'd like to really touch base with you on this is. This actually, I cut this from the DNC. This is when the Brockport group, the Gay Liberation Front out of Brockport. This is a result of the Speakers Bureau. Patty Evans, when she was a student, remember that picture? That's it. Yeah, she was pretty. This is Patty Evans, her thoughts on homosexuality. So the idea, they're saying you got to come out. So these members, they all had to actually come out, right? You can't just say, okay, we're all going to come out, we're going to join this organization, and not actually come out. The idea of coming out at a time when people were being persecuted for it, when families weren't going to accept it, it's profound. As a gay man, I didn't come out until, I think, I was in my early 30s. When I started going to MCC, teaching. I was a construction worker. Construction workers don't come out as gay when you're in construction, right? That's just that's not safe, right? And so it came out late. So as someone who came out very late in life, I can really appreciate how difficult it is to step out and say you're gay. These young people didn't have a choice. That's what they were calling for, was to step out. The DNC does run an ad, runs a paper on the march in New York City in 1970. There's a march in '69, but it's actually in Philadelphia. Then the 1970 Christopher Street March, the new DNC does come up with an article. Doesn't seem too bad. This is really what the march looked like. But this is from the DNC. This is the only thing that's in the DNC. It is a front page picture of these gay guys getting hit with the cops, and there is no follow-up article, no explanation, just a front page picture. Patty talks about the march. She thinks it's pretty good. Now look, the march, there's two people that I want to address with this thing about the march. When they go to New York City in '71 for the first Pride, so they took a bus out of Rochester. About 20 members went. Some people from Brockport or Buffalo went as well. So they get to this thing, and Karen went to a dance with all women. And these women were still doing rope flying back in those days. And Karen she wasn't used to this. And back in class, you still wore a dress to class, right? When you went to work, you still wore a dress. The idea that these women, some topless, were all dancing around had an effect on Karen that she will keep with her. Patty Evans also was there. She didn't have a problem with the women's dance. She could deal with that. But what really freaked her out was this is Albany. This is Rochester at the game. This one actually, the picture I went too fast for you guys. Nobody else got that picture. I cut that from something. But this is what Patty Evans was upset about. That the radicalness, the guys dressing up as women, men being half dressed in the street. Patty Evans would have a fit about that. And there's quite a bit of that. Now I'm getting rid of a whole mess of pages here for you, so bear with me. I know this is, I want to get to the, where this actually starts breaking out. They do this great thing on homosexuality and the law. You may have had, they had the other universities were there. There were 6. And out of all the guys that were there was like 20 people there. No, I'm sorry, there's 30 people there. 4 women, no blacks, no trans people. The writing's on the wall. Things are progressing, but other groups, other people are being left out. That's not going to sit well with our groups. This is actually the cover page of what it really looked like. The other page was printed up later. It's hand drawing. These are the guys that went to this hearing to get the laws changed in New York. The bill fails, 60-something to 80-something. But what it's saying, if we look at the numbers, it's saying that things are moving in the right direction. Even though the rights, for fair housing is denied, it's on its way. This is these guys at the empty. This is these guys sitting at the hearing from this empty closet. It's Bob Osborne sitting over there. You got the name. RJ wrote me those labels 20 years ago. Okay. This is what the left side of so I bring this back in because I just want to touch base on how many people was it actually. There's over 1,000 names on the list. 1,058 something names are added to the list. This is the card again. This is the women. This is where I'm going to finish up. Bear with me. I'm almost done. I want to share with you what happens and why these groups split up like they do. The issue of women involvement in the organization of the U of R group came to a head in February of 1973. At a weekly meeting on a Sunday night, Joseph Johns was moderating. There were around 30 or 40 members present. John relates the story of how, without any foreknowledge of his, a woman he had never seen before stood up. Karen can probably fill us in some more on this. Stood up. We decided we're not coming to this meeting anymore. With her went most of the women of the Rochester Gay Liberation Front that had formed, and they formed their own group. The new group was called the Gay Radical Organization for Women, or GROW. After the women left, the meeting became more political and to John, less friendly. Johns would leave before the separation between the students and the city, but for him, the writing was on the wall. Things were changing. Karen Hegberg, founder of the Speakers Bureau, was one of the women who walked out that February meeting. She would continue to speak publicly for the GLF, but slowed her involvement in all the other gay groups. She started as a grad student at the beginning of the GLF movement and felt that it was time to move on. She believed that reasons for the women had separated themselves from the men were that women's issues needs were not being met. These are the same reasons the Daughters of Bilitis had separated from the Mattachine in 1955. Issues were not the same for lesbian women as they were for gay men. Women were not getting VD, at least not at a rate that is the men anyhow, and they were not interested in the latest cruise places. And these are the kind of conversations that the men are having. It's just not fitting in well with the women. The women had been dramatically influenced by their trip to New York City in 1971. They had seen feminism in a new radical form, and they had not forgotten. Women's liberation had contributed to the gay liberation movement, but with little recognition. Even the consciousness-raising groups that the GLF used from the beginning were developed by the women's liberation movement. They were used as tools to develop women's group identity. The Women's Committee, formed in October of '72, the purpose of this committee was to give women in the group a forum where they could meet only with women to discuss special interests with women. The first meeting was a potluck supper. The meetings discussed over issues of can we be sisters with the women's liberationists, pros and cons. Lesbian participation in the feminist movement, was that possible? GROW, the Gay Revolution of Women, evolved from the GLF Women's Committee and became independent of the GLF in February of 1973. The group met at the Women's Center on East Avenue in Rochester. At the first meeting, after dealing with the topic of guilt, the topic turned to such things as women's lifestyles and values. The breakup of the GLF was emotionally hard for men who had been part of the movement from the beginning, as well as the women. Bob Crystal, having worked with gay rights since the early days of Cornell in 1996, then in leadership of the Rochester Gay Liberation Front since '72, was stunned and devastated. There had been attempts to involve women in the discussions and roles, but with little success. Women didn't stay because they couldn't stay. Women were affected by social trends that gay men could not hope to understand. Gay culture was still dominant over women, whether straight or gay. Lesbians at the GLF felt that they needed to separate themselves from the male-dominated organizational structure. Lesbians were influenced by the larger feminist movement, and gay men had no movement of their own to compare to. The women's movement freed women from the culture-created sexual stereotypes. This, in turn, influenced gay men to begin to question sex roles. Hence, the growth of the gay movement came about because of the work of the women's liberation movement. One woman writes in the summer edition of 1972 of the EC that the spirit should be that the split should taken as a time to get to understand themselves as people and not as labels. Who knows if the GLF will ever again be a co-ed organization? Change was coming to the Gay Liberation Front, though most of its members did not see it coming, and still fewer would know why. With the women gone, topics at the weekly meetings degenerated into discussions on how to pick up other men or who was the best-looking man in the room. Joseph Johns, the moderator at the meeting where the women walked out, felt that the meetings had turned less friendly, more political. There's a real question as to which direction the movement should go. The answer was not long in coming. By the end of the fall semester of 1973, the GLF received another blow, this one from the university. The GLF leadership was informed that the University of Rochester felt that the GLF was no longer a student organization and more a city-oriented group. They had either to focus on activities or leave. The GLF decided it was time to split the organization up. On April 8th of 73, this is about the women's movement and the split up. The DNC is starting to pick this up. You get a lot of more information from that. On April 8th, 1973, the University of Rochester Gay Liberation Front voted to reorganize it into two autonomous groups, students and city. Effective July 1st, 1973, the Empty Closet publication was transferred to the new city group, the Gay Alliance of the Genesee Valley, located at Bull's Head area on Brown Street. The new group's facility was donated by an interested member in the organization. The GAGV Coordinating Council that oversaw these changes did not miss a beat, maintaining an organized staff. The Speakers Bureau was kept working, and on July 16th and 17th, 73, Bob Crystal and Mike Robinson talked about gay life on channel WATC TV. The Rochester Gay Liberation Front, located at the University of Rochester, was coming to an end. Unrecorded here are the changed lives that the young people who created the organization out of passion and love that still defines the LGBTQ community today is not told at this point. But that's a story for another day. Thank you. I have there's like 100 and something slides on this thing where I've that I've kept that I keep putting on. This was RJ and Karen at that last thing we did on March 2nd. And their bios, Bob Crystal, and everybody's bio. This is the group. So I wanted to get to this picture. So these are members of the Gay Liberation Front, the founding members, all in one room in one photograph at one time. When's the last time that happened? It would have been, so, yeah, right? Isn't that it's quite remarkable. When that photograph was being taken, I ran over to the guy at the library and told him, do you know when the last time these people have been together like this? We got to get this one. You sent me this particular copy. My copies weren't good. I was using my telephone, and I'm short, so I had to be behind. I was behind everybody. It was tough. So, all right, thank you. Questions, answers, thoughts?
Very interesting.
Okay, ask me a question.
You just look scared.
Got your homework done?
Seriously. What homework? You never gave me any.
I never did homework. homework is like tests. It's the violence that we do to young people.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were
It's
going
my
to
favorite
say it.
thing. That's it all time. No questions? Yeah.
Today's next in 1950 McCartney, doesn't it? You know, the language that popped with that, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's really scary. Because my interests are the 60s, when I look at Watergate and I look at the Nixon White House and the crimes that he would have been impeached for if he didn't resign, right? It was just obvious. And this was across party lines. Today, what's going on today is nothing in comparison. I mean, Nixon didn't tell anybody to go break into the Watergate Hotel. His problem was he thought he could control the message, and he was good at controlling messages. This time, it just didn't work out. The Washington Post wouldn't let it go. But yeah, we need another election. It's coming. Right? It's coming.
So Tim, I would like to ask Karen and Roger, did you think in 1970 that what had happened and has happened over the past 40, 50 years would ever have happened? I mean, did you think gay liberation was actually going to become a reality? Or was it still kind of a thought up here that you would work toward but didn't ever expect to have nailed down?
I think I realized pretty early on that my personal liberation involved coming out. And I did that early on, and it was extremely liberating. What I never thought I would see was the ability to get married. That totally blew me away. Because that was the last frontier, sort of. And as feminist, radical feminist women, we were all kind of against the idea of mimicking heterosexual life and, you know, becoming married by the state. So we didn't fight for marriage rights. The women, radical lesbian women, never fought for marriage rights, but gay men did. And we thought they were misguided. But we thought also, that'll never happen. So, you know, fast forward many decades, I got married as soon as I could to my partner who I've been with for, at that point, 22 years. And I never thought that would happen. And we always said, my wife and I always said that, okay, and we thought it would never happen. We'll get married when the federal government says we can get married and all those benefits like Social Security and stuff extend to us. Because all this little state-by-state stuff didn't seem real to us, and it was like, oh, they're just pretending to be married and blah, blah, blah. But we said, yeah, we'll get married. Even though we didn't believe in marriage, we'll get married when this happens, thinking that it was never going to happen in my lifetime. And when it did, we got married 2 weeks later. So, went through a lot of changes about that. But, you know, of course, so many other things happened along the way that have been pretty amazing. I mean, what blows me away every year is to see the march, to see all the new contingents in the march. You know, the businesses, the churches, the social agencies, the you know, the police, the firemen, I mean, all this stuff, the candidates, I mean, it's mind-blowing. I never thought I would see that much. No, I never did. I mean, we couldn't envision that at that point. All we wanted to do, I mean, I really like the way you emphasized, Tim, that message that we were sick. Because personally for me, that was something that I just always intrinsically knew was wrong. And my personal coming out had everything to do with declaring, I am not sick. And it went, that's as far as it went, really. If these people would just stop thinking I was sick, I'd be happy. So that was my goal, really. And that's why my interest in doing speaking in front of groups, to sort of help people understand that, damn it, I wasn't sick. Yeah.
I find this kind of interesting that this would fall at this period, time of the year, when the Jewish people just got done celebrating what we call Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust National Remembrance Day. And we got to remember that the men back then, not only being Jewish, but being gay was a double whammy.
Yeah, for sure.
And that too many of them just disappeared because of who they were.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have, if anybody has any information on that I would add to my research, and RJ and I are like weekly in touch, right? And so I send him stuff, and he helps me stay focused, helps me with, because we're moving on with the project. It's growing pretty rapidly. It's rapid enough that I'm not paying my bills on time, so I will work on that. I gotta balance it a little better. I get wrapped up in my research, and nothing else matters to me. Even this week in school, I think, did I ever stop?
No, I kept saying, you need to take a break, you're non-stop.
I work, so,
I have a correction in that caption there.
okay.
After Marjorie should be a comma, and Whitey should be W-H-I-T-E-Y.
Oh, all right.
He's a separate person. And the
Marjorie,
person
right.
on the right is Pam, not Susan.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Jeez. Yeah, I'll get it. I didn't send this picture to RJ. You can see that, right?
Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, he would have known about Whitey. I'm not sure how well he knew Pam.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you.
Pam.
Pam Barali. B-A-R-R-A-L-E.
Got it. And a comma.
Who was one of the first lesbian women in town to raise children that she gave birth to herself in a lesbian relationship.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I need to interview.
Yes, you
Yes,
do.
I do. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The next year.
On that note, today's Amy Dickinson, which is the new Dear Abby in our paper, people do not choose their sexual orientation. And it talks about families and having children. And using this language, the person who writes and uses loaded language that she unpacks and reminds people of that they love their children, that this isn't about any predatory behaviors. And that's today, that's this morning.
That's today, right,
DNC.
Things changed. I'm going to trace that in the research as well, because it's that the portrayal of the DNC this afternoon isn't it's the times, but times moved, and the gay liberation movement in front did their work, and then the GAGB did their work, and our community moved along, and it is a progressive community. So again, I didn't mean to, it seems, I don't mean to denigrate I know, but it was troubling to me when I was doing it.
It's interesting that the information is still coming from the new Dear Abby.
Yes, from another, good.
Yeah, it's a new Dear Abby.
What's that, I don't get the paper, what's that lady's name?
Oh, yeah. Amy Dickinson.
Amy did.
She's the new Dear Abby, that people still trust the question, and she's
Yeah.
there to say, you don't say that, and that's not who these people are. These are loving, caring people in relationships who want their children.
I'm writing that down, still asking a Dear Abby question.
And we talk about lesbians adopt or give birth to male and female children and become their parents in loving ways.
And what website is that?
This is this morning's DNC. This is, so today's paper. But it's interesting that you know, because I'm learning a lot, that it's Dear Abby who helped put people in a spot that was safe you know, and that this Amy Dickinson is still reminding people, you know, that these are safe relationships, that these are, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting to note that they're still doing that, and yeah. There are a lot of Ann Landers and Dear Abby columns to go through. I've gone through a lot of them, but there's still a lot more to go through, which is my next task.
It was a place you could be anonymous and yet public, which is kind of unique. You know.
So does
The other
it,
thing that I think we forget and we don't pay attention to is, well, now, if you're LGBTQ and in Rochester, things aren't too bad. And yet, you don't have to look far to recognize that the rights we have
They're very
can so
precarious.
easily
Right.
be swept aside. It took Susan B. 100 and however many years to see the right to vote for women come to fruition in 1929. In 1969, we had Stonewall, even though it occurred, or gay liberation was occurring beforehand. Only in 2002, 2003, did Sonder pass. That's less than a span of 40 years. But without Sonder, individual gays and lesbians could not be protected against discrimination in employment, discrimination in housing, discrimination in access to services. We didn't deal with marriage at that point
Right.
because the basic living needs had to be met. Now we have marriage. But make no mistake, that's as fragile as a feather on a sill outside that can be blown away. We have to remain vigilant and continue to speak.
Come out.
anyone else have anything that want to add?
Well, thank you. That was a great.
Yeah.
That was a
Well,
great.
thanks. I know it gets
talk.
it's a lot there, and
Yeah.
it gets kind of
It's
gets
amazing
done in the
how
minutia,
research you've
but
done.
there's a lot of stuff that we have not we haven't addressed yet, and I don't know exactly how to get it out there unless we read a book. So
Write a book, Jim.
read a
I
book.
read it.
Well, I'll read it.
Okay. Well, we're talking. I mentioned it to RJ. This
Yeah.
is just the stuff that we've collected over the years that I have in the archives there. And I spent 2.5 hours on the phone with Larry Fine the other day. That Evelyn helped me hook that up. So is there somebody here that was there that I haven't met personally? Were you there at the